whenever you're ready.
Okay. We'd like to welcome everyone to the March 10th Landmarks Commission meeting. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you keep your microphone muted and use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located at the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website or email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to call the March 10th, 2022 Landmarks Commission to order. Mr. Pettit, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson. Mr. Bonezzi.
Here.
Mr. Colicchia.
Here.
Mr. Dreyer.
Here.
Mr. Edmond.
Here.
Director Wong. Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik.
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
We are also joined today by Kevin Roberts, our representative from the Law Department. Carl Brunges is hosting the meeting, and our AmeriCorps member is also here, Emily Spezia-Schwiff. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. We will begin with our certificates of appropriateness today. Our first applicant, we'd like to welcome you to the meeting. Please announce yourself, unmute yourself and announce yourself and tell us about your project. The first applicant is located at 8206 Detroit Avenue, Storefront Renovation.
Madam Chair, we had to adjust the agenda at the request of one of the applicants. So the item you just mentioned is now third on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then we will begin with Ohio City Burrito at 1844 West 25th Street, garage door installation.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if the applicant's here yet.
Okay. Shall we move on to the third applicant?
I think we should move to the second item.
Okay. Let's move on to the next applicant. Located at 5817 Detroit Avenue, Renovation.
Madam Chair, I would just introduce this by saying that we reviewed this on February 10th of this year. We had a motion to approve, which failed because we had a tie vote. The applicants have revised the presentation and they're back today seeking approval again.
Thank you for that update. I'd like to welcome the applicant. If you'd like to tell us, go ahead and tell us about your project, or the revisions, I should say.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mark Demchik. I'm the owner of the property, and I'm going to let my architect, Mike Rose, describe everything that he's completed for landmarks. So, Michael, could you please explain? I know he's there. You there, Michael?
Yeah, I apologize for that. We were, our speaker wasn't on, so I had to put my headset on. So sorry about that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, they want to explain the changes, Michael.
Okay, yeah, and again, I apologize for that. I was talking with Eric Trent. We thought our audio was working. So at any rate, what I wanted to address with the committee is that we tried to first and foremost address the concerns of the committee last time. And I think the primary concerns we had were the front deck, the front elevation as far as the fascia board and the corbels, and the color of the brick. I talked to Don several times about the things that I thought we needed to address, and those are that. So if you're looking at the image we have right now, that was our image that we presented to you last time. If we click to the next one, keep going, one more, right there. If you look at this image, what we've done is we've addressed all the concerns of the committee, I believe, with changing the corbels to the single corbels that that are originally there. We changed the brick color to more of a gray rather than the black, because I believe the committee last time didn't like the black. We addressed the front door to make sure the doors were all uniform. In addition to that, there was a member on the committee that was concerned about the drainage for the decking system. So I've shown the new gutters that we were putting on, and if you go to the end of the presentation, you'll see where I show a decking system that allows for proper drainage, because again, it is a sloped roof, which obviously we would put, if you keep going, you'll see at the end. There's the new front elevation that shows the fascia, shows the single corbels, shows the changes in the wall. I think there was a concern about, like I said, the color of the paint. So I kind of showed you a gray that I think hopefully appeases the committee. There you go, right there. I think that was one of the members' concern, was how are we going to drain this thing? And this is just an example of a system that we can use that allows for a sloped roof with an elevated decking system that gives proper drainage to the gutters. Right there. Also, in addition to that, Don and I spoke, and I believe that we like the vertical siding, but there was, I think, suggestion, can we show a rendering in the horizontal siding? So I tried to provide both of those for you. If you continue to go back, Carl, keep going back. You'll see there. I mean, there's an image. If there was a concern about horizontal, sure, we could do that. I believe the vertical is more aesthetically pleasing in this situation. But again, at this point, we're just trying to make sure that we address all the concerns we had last time so that we can get approval today. With that being said, I believe that I addressed all of the concerns, and basically open the floor to see any comments.
All right, thank you for the summary of revisions. That is helpful. Since this did not, was failed here, and I'm assuming did not go back to local, correct, Don?
That's correct.
Okay, then we will open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Sorry, there we go. There we go, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think I was the one primarily that first raised the question or concern about the drainage of the decking in the front. And I think the applicant has been very successful in showing a design or a system that will allow for a horizontal plane, a usable deck in the front on top of the sloped roof. And I don't have any problem with the gutter along the fascia board surrounding that deck. So I think that's been very successful, and all of the other changes, I think, address most of the comments and concerns of the commission from the original submission. So I think this is a situation where the applicant has heard our concerns and addressed them successfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Edmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would agree with that. And so some of the other items, I think the two corbels as shown here is very fitting and a nice gesture and a little cleaner than the four corbel option. I think the gray brick is certainly a step in the right direction from the black. It looks a little less commercial. I don't recall a conversation about vertical versus horizontal siding, but in my opinion, the vertical siding is appropriate and quite handsome. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. I'll just interject mine. I would agree and thank the applicant for listening to our feedback and taking it in a constructive way. I think it has helped improve your project. And the consistency of just your building here. So the revisions, I'm in support of the revisions. One question, what system are you using for the decking? Just for curiosity that you found that with the pedestals, it looks like a nice system.
You're talking about the structure, the strict decking composite on the top. You're talking about the foundation below?
No, the pedestal system is with the Trek. That's interesting. I haven't seen that before. That's all.
Yeah, it's Trek composite decking. It's called systematic foundation or systematic structural for the actual structure below the decking.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can, if you'd like, I could send you more details on that.
And my curiosity, I can look it up, but I appreciate the offer.
Okay. Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Bob Strickland. I'll move to approve as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Do we have a second? Mr. Edmond?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasek,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion to approve as presented passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you guys. I appreciate all of your comments and appreciate the approval.
And thank you for listening to the commission and responding accordingly. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We learned a lot these past 4 months. So I really appreciate it. So our next project, we know exactly what to do. Go to you first.
Right. Again, this has been a learning curve for all of us. I think we have a better understanding of how the commission works. And I do believe that you'll be seeing us again because I believe we're going to be investing in this area, more. So thank you for all your help.
We look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We'll move on to our next applicant located at 8206 Detroit Avenue, Storefront Renovation.
Madam Chair, once again, I'm not sure that our applicant is here yet. We moved this project down to accommodate their time schedule. I would call the first item again. It looks like that applicant is here now.
And that's Ohio City Burrito, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I have the agenda up on another screen, so I want to make sure I'm seeing the right one. I'd like to call the applicant at 1844 West 25th Street, Ohio City Burrito Garage Door Installation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. So we, at our location there at West 25th, we replaced a window with a window that could open. Essentially, we just took out the old window and put in a window that was operational, that could open. This happened during the height of the pandemic. Our place is very small, it could get very crowded. So we needed some ventilation and trying to keep the staff as well as our customers healthy and following CDC guidelines, the City of Cleveland Health Department guidelines. We were trying to get some ventilation in our space. We tried to use a window that matched the current windows on the upper part of the building. So the panels are the same size, the materials are the same. They're both anodized aluminum. And I think we were looking towards precedent, that's already on the same street with Town Hall. So with all that being said, that's the window that we use. We didn't change the size of the window opening. We didn't change the sill height. That is the existing window as it is. We just put in a window that can open, basically.
Okay, thank you. That concludes your presentation, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a letter from Councilman McCormick, a support letter stating some of the things I just went over. I submitted some renderings from Arkinetics, our architect, who did some sketches for us, just to show what the storefront could look like with that window, with some different colors and some things that might have it tie into the building possibly a little more cohesively than you see it now. Right now, the current how it looks now is the one to the left. That's the yellow storefront. But we had some options where we could either match the window to the same colors as the windows above in the apartment above us to make it the blue aluminum on the paneling, or we could paint the upstairs windows to match the downstairs window that is more like a dark brown espresso color, and do some more neutral coloring to tie everything into the current look of the building. But the window we put in really does match the windows that were already existing in the upstairs apartment. There weren't really any other types of windows that matched as well as the window that we installed. We did a lot of research on trying to find a window that would tie into the current look of that building. Those upstairs windows are how they are. They match the window that we put in pretty much identically. So that was doing our due diligence. That's as good a window as we could find that could match the building, as well as, there's already, like I said, down the street, the same type of windows already been approved at Town Hall. And like I said, we didn't make any changes to the opening size of the window or anything like that. We were just trying to get through the pandemic like everybody else and try to get some ventilation. Our space is only 900 square feet, and we can get really busy at lunch and dinner times, and we're just trying to get some fresh air in there.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Nate Law, Ohio City Incorporated. This presentation was seen 5 times over 2 years. It was tabled twice. Most recently, it was voted on January 20th, 2022. The Design Review Board voted unanimously to deny all requested approvals, which included the window installation and the paint trim. And their reasoning was they felt it was not an appropriate renovation to the historic district. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. We will, Don, do we have any letters or anything on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to confirm that we have a letter from Councilman Kerry McCormick fully supporting the project based on the same criteria that the applicant mentioned, including ventilation and the precedent at Town Hall. And we do have a staff report from Mr. Brunges at this time, I think.
Go ahead, Mr. Brunges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support all businesses, but we also have to look at the Secretary of the Interior standards for our guide. And we also have to remember that, as I've said previously on other projects, that all projects are taken on a case-by-case basis. And while there may be precedent in the neighborhood, it doesn't necessarily apply in the same manner to each building. Each building is unique. So in overlooking the information that was given to us by the applicant, it appears that the door was ordered previous to the first design review meeting in July, and the date on the drawing here is in June. So a similar door was installed at their Lakewood location, but it was like Town Hall, it was replacing a non-original system. They did not have, and it was installed prior to Lakewood's downtown historic district being added to the National Register. So the same Secretary of the Interior standards did not apply to that location. And this is what it looked like before at Lakewood, just so you have reference, because this was brought up. Here's what Town Hall looked like previously. One of the main differences between the Town Hall project and this project is that the Town Hall project is not a contributing structure to the historic district. And Ohio City Burritos building is. We would support and agree with the local committee and say that the installation of the garage door, which was done without a permit, be denied. It should be removed, and a more sensitive, appropriate treatment to get the ventilation that is needed into the building be considered. Whether that's in the transom areas or whatnot. But as they have done, we do not feel that that is an appropriate treatment to that building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brunges. We'll then open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Edmond, would you like to start us off?
Yes, just thank you, Madam Chair. One quick question. Has this project been before this board before? And if so, what were the, okay, so it's not, okay, thank you.
It has not been to the commission yet. It was scheduled for the February 10th meeting, but it was removed from the agenda at the request of the applicant. So this is the first time we've seen it at the commission.
Mr. Edmond, do you have any feedback on the project or just that one question?
Yeah, just that question. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Strickland, would you like to questions or comments?
I wondered if we have any historic pictures of the original storefront and of the prior storefront just prior to the installation of the overhead door.
Carl, I don't think we have a historic photo of the building, Mr. Strickland, but I believe that side-by-side image showed the previous condition, the one on the right. was the existing condition. Is that correct, Carla?
These side by sides are of the garage door open, closed. This is
That one.
no, this is showing the opening,
Oh, okay.
and this is closed. This is the rendering that was shown originally. No pictures historic. It'd be something we'd have to go and do further research on.
So the storefront had been modified at some point, and the original historic storefront was no longer present when the garage door was installed. It was a replacement storefront.
I can't confirm that. I would have to find a historic photo. It looks to have the same layout as it would have, but again, we'd have to find a historic photo.
We didn't change anything other than the window. There was a double pane window. So even if all you have to do is picture, there's just a piece of glass. So if you look at the picture on the right, just imagine a piece of glass in there, a 5.5 foot by 5.5 foot piece of glass. All we did was take that piece of glass out and install a window that had the ability to open. There's nothing else that we changed on the storefront in the 13.5 years that we've been there.
So it was just one solid piece of glass.
Correct.
No muttons, no mullions.
Correct.
And Carl, we have no idea whether that was original or not.
That would take a little bit more research.
Okay, I'll step aside and see if there's any other comments. Thank you.
I guess I was on the same path as you, Mr. Strickland. I was looking on Google Earth, and ironically, it shows your door open, so it doesn't show this is a recent picture. Just to refamiliarize with what was there originally. Other questions or comments from the commission?
I just have a question in terms of ownership of the building. Does the applicant own the building, or are you a tenant?
I'm a tenant. I had supported my landlord on this project.
So did your landlord do the work, or did you do the work? Actually contracting for the work?
No, I contracted Action Door did the work.
Yeah, I know, but did you contract them, or did the owner of the building?
I did, with permission of the owner.
Yeah, it's really the responsibility of the building owner to go through the permitting process.
Right. I applied for the permit before the work was done, and the way I read the permit was I could actually start the work in conjunction with the permitting process. That's how I read the application of the permit. So I started this application. You could check with the building department, but the permit was pulled before any work was done, and I filled all that out and submitted it. And then it kind of, the way I read the application was I could start work, in fact, while that process was taking place. Now, it sat there for however long, but I did what I could on my end. I think I'd like to read the letter for the record as well from the councilman that I believe you guys have a copy of. This is from Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Before we go there, and I apologize, I don't know this. Was this circulated, Carl, and did I miss it? Or done?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this was shared with the commission earlier this week, the day we got it from the councilman. So you should all have it. I can read it if that's your pleasure, but the commission has received it. I don't know if everyone's read it yet.
I apologize. I haven't had a chance, but I can pull it up right now. Yeah, I think this just puts us in a particular, predicaments that I'm sorry, before I go into that, Mr. Brunges, you had your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the building permit application in my hand right now. The building permit application was dated 4/14/21. The work was completed before then, as there had been a building violation notice called in prior to that.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think this puts us in an awkward position again, that work has been done without a permit, and we're being asked retroactively to approve things that may or may not align with the district requirements. I think as Carl mentioned, or Mr. Brunges mentions, we support business. We want to make sure your business is successful. But it puts us in an awkward position because now we are having to evaluate things that obviously you have installed already. And I wish we could have had this conversation earlier, because there's so many products out there that could have met your needs and our needs. And so that's just a predicament we're both in now. I personally do not agree with the configuration of the door based on when it's closed. I think it's the providing the opportunity to get air to that front area. I do like, but the product that you selected, I'm personally not a fan of, because it does look like a retrofit and not as appropriate to this location. So I'm personally, at a crossroads of, for the aesthetic, I don't really support the current design.
All right, can we read the letter? Is that something we can do? It sounds like a lot of people haven't heard it or read it or seen it, so.
Why don't you go ahead so that we have it as part of the record, and then we can continue with the commission's feedback.
Good morning, Mr. Pettit. Please accept this email as my full support for case 22-007. Ohio City Burrito is a cherished small business in the Ohio City neighborhood. They've been operating successfully for years and are a true value add to our community. They replaced an existing window with an operational window during the heart of the pandemic in order to increase ventilation. This was done in accordance and recommendation with CDC and City of Cleveland health standards and suggestions. I believe that this is not only appropriate, but it also follows historically granted precedent as seen at the Town Hall restaurant on the same street in the same historic district. Please submit this letter into the record, and I urge all Landmark Commission members to vote yes to support this local small business. Thank you, Carrie.
I apologize. I have a little back injury. Okay, I apologize. I have some background noise here. Other questions or comments from the commission?
Are you asking me?
I truly apologize. Other questions or comments from the commission? Or would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carl, would it be possible to do some research and try to find an historic photo of this original storefront?
I am sure we can do that.
I think it would be very helpful to me personally if I had a better understanding of what was there historically and how close this new installation might be to an historic storefront. If they're replacing something that was not original to the building or necessarily even that old, then I would tend to view this application more favorably if they were replacing something that was non-historic. That's my personal opinion. So I would personally benefit from additional research to find out what was there historically and suggest that the applicant might consider tabling this application until we have an opportunity to do further research.
I think that's a great suggestion, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Edmond, you had something to add to that? Right.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, whoever posted the note in the chat about being able to see the historic views on Google Earth. So if anyone else has Google Earth Street View open, you can go in the upper left and select previous views. So we can see what was previously installed there. It's a little hard to tell, but it does not look historic. It just appears to be a piece of glazing glazed in with an unpainted wood glazing block, which seems to be similar to what's still currently existing on the side light. So it's not a piece of storefront, and it is one large glass light. It doesn't look historic to me. Also, I believe the second floor windows are also replacements. Is that correct? They look like newer aluminum units.
If it helps and we're tabling this, I can get all this information from Tom Gillespie, the landlord, but I'm fairly certain that yes, he did do a renovation on this before we moved in 2009. And right, those are modern aluminum windows above us in the apartment. And that's what we were trying to match with the aluminum window that we installed.
Madam Chair seems to have stepped away for a moment. Mr. Strickland, staff can investigate trying to find a historic photo of the building. We can check our case file record to see if what we've approved here in the past. I don't recall every single storefront we've ever approved in this district, but we can check the case file record and the historic record and come back with some more information, assuming the applicant is agreeable to tabling this.
I'm okay with that.
All right, with the temporary absence of the chair, I would move to, with the permission of the applicant, to table this project.
I second that.
I'm back. Thank you. Apologize about that. I had somebody at my front door that was causing my dogs to go crazy. Mr. Strickland, thank you for that recommendation. You had asked the question to the owner. Would the owner, we need your permission to table it to give you additional time to, or the staff additional time to address the historic pictures. Would the applicant be in support that, or the other option would be that we do take a vote on this?
He's agreed to it already.
Madam Chair, the applicant had already given his permission, and there was a motion to table and a second from Mr. Colicchio. Motion from Mr. Strickland, second from Mr. Colicchio.
Thank you. I apologize if I was redundant there. Is there any further discussion? Okay, then Mr. Pettit, can you please call roll?
Mr. Bonazzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion to table passes unanimously. We will schedule this at a future date when we can get it on an agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to our next applicant located at 8206 Detroit Avenue, Storefront Renovation.
Hello, I'm Nick Berardi. I don't think my my architect is here, but I could do the presentation if you'd like.
That is your choice. We can either move to the next applicant if you'd like to wait for your architect, or you can proceed with your presentation.
We could proceed, I think.
Go ahead.
So this is the, do I take it from here or would somebody else?
No, this is, I would be, you are welcome to take it from here and present your project.
Okay. This is as it looks at this time. So it's on the corner of West 83rd and Detroit. It's the northeast corner. And so that's just the square footage. It's apartments on the second floor, storefronts in the first floor. So this is the aerial map. If you notice, there's a garage that will be removed in the back to allow for some parking. The project is to replace the store. We're actually going to peel down the entire front of the building and replace the porches in the back and pave the parking lot. So that's another view of the front. We're going to keep a lot of that detail, so when you get a little farther in, you'll be able to see. You could advance some more. That's a side view from West 83rd Street. Those are the garages that are going to come down and the rear porches to be replaced. There is no fencing there right now that goes across that side. Next slide. If you notice on that picture that, well, this one will show the same thing. If you notice that angle across the front, there's no real detail to the front of that in either one of those pictures. This picture is taken from 1967 to give you an idea of what it looks like. If you notice those storefronts to the right, the center one and the one on the right-hand side, a lot of that is still existing underneath that siding. So it'll be just, some of that will be a matter of opening up, see how stable it is, and go from there. We could advance. So this is what we project to do to it. So we plan on peeling the entire front of the building down, at least down to the top of the windows, replace any steel that's in there, and then replacing all the bricks all the way up, putting the new balls on the top, and trying to make everything look the same as it was originally. Next slide. So this is the side view. If you notice that angled part in the front there, we added some balls to the front to try to incorporate that and make it look like it conforms with the rest of the building. And those are the colors there that some of the possible colors that we picked. So the building it's painted at this time. It's already painted. So we would be repainting it a similar color, the Downing sand, doors in rustic red with black window frames, and just a stone color for all the stonework. This is the back porches. Nothing too excited to talk about there. We'll point all the brickwork and repaint it and put the new porches in. Here's some of the materials that we're thinking about doing. We'll have cast new balls, brick cobbling, brick veneer, aluminum window frames, steel doors, composite wood molding, and cement board panels. The cement board panels is the part underneath the windows, the flat parts. And I think that's pretty much what we have.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to feedback from the local committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Gordon Square Design Review Committee on February 23rd. Unanimously, they were thrilled to see this. They loved the project, and it was nice to see a restoration approach to this. Some of the things, this was moved, it was motion to approve as presented to consider location for signage and electrical drops, which they have incorporated here, that the storefront be a darker color, and then talked about a darker color for the bulkheads for reverse. They had presented a white with a green trim, and they switched it to the green panels with the white trim. They asked for street trees in the front, and that the cast stone and lintels be a contrasting color to the brick. They also approved the demolition of the garage for future resident parking. Thank you.
Thank you for the summary. We'll move on then and open the floor to the commission for questions or comments.
Madam Chair, before we move to the commission, we have a letter of support from the CDC Northwest Neighborhoods. They fully support the project. The property has long been a challenge for this section of Detroit Avenue. It was acquired by our organization in 2016 from the Cuyahoga County Land Bank and sold to Mr. Berardi in 2016. Since that time, Mr. Berardi has made significant investments in several nearby properties, and we are pleased to see him moving forward with the development of this property as well. We support the local committee's decision, and we will continue to work with Mr. Berardi on parking and right-of-way improvements, existing canopy restoration as the project progresses. So Northwest Neighborhoods fully supports the project.
Thank you for the summary of the letter received. We'll then move on to Mr. Edmonds. Questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this looks like a great project. Couple of questions. It looks like that there may be some spalling or cracking on the existing stone lintels. Do you have repair of those in your scope as well?
The ones in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah, those will all be replaced.
Okay. Those were replaced with cast stone?
Cast, most likely precast concrete.
Okay.
We plan on peeling the entire front down, so everything that's in the front will be redone.
Okay. And on the east elevation, are you just pointing and painting that?
Correct.
And the rustic red color for the door, is that all doors will be that color?
That's a plan at this time, yes.
Okay. And then finally, Madam Chair, this is more a procedural question. Would they come back for signage when there's a final sign design?
Yes, they would be required to come back for final signage approval. But in concept, this is, if those are the locations, we would want to improve that so that all signage would stay within those areas.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Klickia?
Yes, good morning. Could I see that rendering or the old photograph that shows the angled entrance? Yeah, that one. So what are we doing with that particular entrance? I didn't see more recent. What are you doing with that particular entrance actually?
The entrance, that one right there?
Well, we're not. Well, yes, but do we have an actual elevation of that entrance as it's shown at an angle or not?
I think it's shown on the right side there, Giancarlo.
Yeah, all right. So that will be restored as we see it here. Right?
Correct. Right.
And the very top of it, the archway and the two bollards, I guess, will be as we see them.
That's the plan at this time, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Pettit, I still see your hand up. Was there additional comments?
No, my mistake. Sorry.
No problem. I'll interject my comments now. My only question was, and I think I just answered it through Google Earth. Are you maintaining and reusing the existing brick sills that are on and bulkhead that is on the left side of the screen? So are you working within that existing opening?
The windowsills on the
Correct.
upstairs or the downstairs?
Downstairs.
Downstairs, yes. We were going to leave that alone. We planned on replacing the brick. You know, once you start working on it, you just figure out where you end. But the idea right now is to replace everything from the brickwork from the top of the transom windows up all the way up to the top of the parapet. So that brick on the bottom is existing, and we were just leave that was the plan.
Okay. And then the window on the angled part, and I'm sorry if you said this and I just missed it. Right, per your new elevation, it looks like it's larger and has a stone pediment. But on that original and existing, it's a smaller window. Are you replacing that window?
We will replace that window. That we plan on just putting the same type of window as the rest of them. The rest of them are just vinyl replacement windows. And we made it a little larger to try to have it conform with the rest of the windows because it looked like an oddball.
Agree. I think that's a great decision. Will you reuse the sandstone sill?
It will build a new one. Because right now I don't know if there is a sandstone still. I think it might just be brickwork on it now.
Okay.
There's a sandstone still, but it'll have a new one that matches the rest of them.
Okay, that's helpful. I think that's all my questions at the time. I mean, I think this is a very sensitive restoration. You know, I appreciate you and applaud you for taking on this building. You know, I think it's in a great area, especially with the neighboring work to really have a, the renovation and restoration is very timely. Other questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe as part of the presentation in the colors, yeah, right here, let's see, that the window frames on the storefront are going to be black, and the replacement windows, did you say they're going to be vinyl throughout?
They already are. We're just going to leave those because they're all functional.
Okay, so you're not replacing the windows in the apartment units?
Correct.
Okay. And on this elevation, you have the brick rendered in a a bolder color on the bottom and lighter on top. Will all of that brick be painted?
Yeah, that brick will be the same color. I believe the reason it's just, that's gonna be the original brick. So
I see.
that's the only reason I could think of that he put it in a darker color.
But it'll all paint the same, even the new replacement brick will paint
Correct,
with the rest of the building.
correct.
That's fine. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the questions, Strickland. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Edmond?
I move that the project be approved as presented with the provision that any future signage would come back for review.
Thank you thank you, Mr. Edmond. Mr. Dryer?
I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Mr. Bonezzi, Mr. Bonezzi, Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasic,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion to approve as presented with signage to return passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Good luck. We look forward to seeing your project progress. We'll move on to our next applicant, located at 870 Martin Luther King Drive, the Romanian Garden Revised Garden Plan. I'd like to welcome the applicant to open your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Zhurka, and I'm a member of the Friends of the Romanian Cultural Garden. And I believe we also have George Cantor on the line. I don't know if he'll be able to join audibly, but I think he's watching. So I'll just conduct the presentation for today. I'll be our representative. And then also we did invite and I think Lori is also here from the Cultural Gardens. Hi.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
I saw you on there. Great. We also invited our landscape architect to attend from Environmental Design Group, Stephanie. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to participate at this time, but we'll be sure to pass along any comments to her as well. But they've prepared us a bit for being able to present their design work for you today. Okay, so hopefully this project is somewhat memorable to many of you. We're coming back about exactly a year ago. I believe it was in March, where we presented the conceptual plan for the project, which at that time was relatively early, where the location of the pathways and the general layout was presented. And essentially, it seemed like we received some positive feedback from the committee at that time, but we needed to conduct some additional investigation of tree locations. And since then, our landscape architects have developed what's very close to construction drawings. I'd say about 95% complete, based on more accurate locations of trees, a better assessment of the health of the trees, also the soil topography, and we also had a conversation, as was requested at the last meeting, to coordinate with the city of Cleveland on maintenance. So in August of 2021, so this past August, we did meet on site with the Commissioner of Parks and Maintenance as well as the urban forester and a member of their team to walk through the site, to look at the plan. We also had our landscape architect there in attendance as well. So we were able to talk about some of the details, and essentially we wanted to know, like, what are the challenges that the city finds most common in their maintenance of the park design, so that we could avoid any of those challenges. So with all that in mind, the plans before you are a kind of a culmination of all that work. On the slide right here, it shows basically the plan to retain most of the trees. The only things that you see there which have X's through them are a couple of trees that were found to be dying or essentially already dead. And also relocating about 3 or 4 trees that we intend to retain them, but they will be relocated and moved onto the site into another location that's will ensure their long-term health, given some of the maneuvering for construction and adjustments to the landscape for the trail. So that's it. We can maybe move to the next slide. Thanks. So in this plan drawing, it shows the overall design for the site, which is similar to what was presented last year, but much more refined. What's shown in this package is what we consider to be the first phase of work, and elements that we consider to be part of a subsequent phase are boxed in and shown, but they're called out as elements for the future. Basically, we want to move the land, we want to move the ground, we want to get the ground plane established now, we want to have the trails built, the pathways, and then the elements that will come in a subsequent phase are things like the smaller monuments, additional like cultural heritage elements, some of the benches, some of the seating, so things that are kind of on pedestals that will happen in a subsequent phase. So we don't have the details on those. We simply have them located for now, so that we can kind of coordinate that game plan as it goes forward. And of course, we would come back to you with those elements as they are designed and as we've kind of defined exactly what those are intended to be. One element that we will retain and relocate is the only thing that's not vegetation on the site right now, which is the Georgianescu statue. We plan to relocate it from its current location, which is kind of tucked away up in the hillside, and move it to a more prominent location in the center of the site, so it's a little bit more equidistant between both sides, and it'll also be on axis from Martin Luther King, so that it's more visible, and he's kind of like looking over the performance area up front. The statue is actually in pretty good shape, the actual metal part of the statue. Of course, that'll be restored and cleaned up, but the base that it's sitting on is not in great shape, so that'll be removed and then rebuilt in its new location. As far as the ground plane elements go, there's a few different textures. The element in the center that you can see, that double spiral, that's an ancient Dacian symbol. So that's sort of the organizing element, the memorable element of the site plan. And that is intended to be more frequently used and traversed. So that's a concrete that can withstand more wear and tear, and people using it for events. Then there's also a portion on the sides of it. I think in the middle there's a section of dotted space in the kind of just to the right of the left-hand spiral. In that dotted area, that's a reinforced grass, a reinforced landscape. So in the areas where we think that there might be more people on it, we're just concerned about, any kind of long-term damage to the grass. We don't want it to look bad. So in that area, it's reinforced. So also if there's a need to bring, a vehicle in just to drop off equipment for events, we're, quite active during the One World Day annual events, which are, really a great opportunity to showcase the Romanian culture. We also intend with this new design to have more events here, so they can be more conducive. Right now, it's a little bit difficult to do that because there really aren't the accommodations for it, and you're asking people to stand in the grass for long periods of time, and if the weather isn't compliant, it can be a problem. So some elements have been designed specifically for that purpose, to have more longevity and wear and tear ability. There's also a significant element that we plan to fundraise for and bring into the future, which is Amara Moorish gate. That again will be part of a subsequent phase, but it's also shown in the plan, identified in the lower right corner. There's a lot more details and materials to discuss. I think the main things that I'll share before I kind of leave it open to questions is our intention to make new connections up to the surrounding neighborhood, which don't currently exist. I mean, I think as many of you know, there's no sidewalk right now that goes up the street to St. Clair. There are no pathways within the garden either. So one of the driving principles of this site design is to provide a pathway that extends up to St. Clair and providing a series of overlook moments with seating. So individuals can come down from the neighborhood, hopefully, and we welcome them to come through our space and enjoy it and give them a more welcoming experience into the full garden experience. And then for considerations for individuals, because that slope is not an ADA accessible slope, I think the only way that we'd be able to achieve that, if that was the aim, would be to have a series of like switchbacks, which would be extremely costly and really change the character of the garden and its kind of natural setting. So we did make accommodations along MLK for individuals that want to participate in events to be dropped off easily. So if you're in a wheelchair or if you have difficulties with walking long distances, we tried to make that really easy for individuals to be dropped off there and still feel like they can fully participate in let's say a wedding or a small concert that's happening on the space. So those are, I think, some of the key elements. Again, there's a lot of other smaller details, but to give you a high level vision, those are the primary elements. We don't plan to have any, I know we had talked about the potential for recognition of individuals in some way. Those elements will likely be things that come in subsequent phases, so we don't have those defined yet. For example, if there's a small monument that can be added adjacent to one of the overlook areas, we'll have to design and define those at that time. But we don't have those defined right now, and we're not doing things like having bricks with people's names on them or anything like that at this point. So nor do we think we're going to do that ever. If we have recognition for individuals, we'll do it in a much more tasteful way that is in alignment with the standards for the cultural gardens more generally. The slides that you see on screen here are just details of how some of the footers and the larger elements will be deployed on the site. I know our landscape architects were paying special attention and coordinated with the city and the urban forester on ways to guide and make accommodations for staging of materials in a way that doesn't harm the trees that are on the site. That's like a big part of the plan. and also providing, ample space and protection around the trees so that they're not damaged over the course of construction. I'll stop here and see if there's any questions, because I'm sure there are, and I'll do my best to answer them. Again, knowing that I feel like our landscape architects have spent a lot more time in detail and the decisions they made, but I'll do my best to respond. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
We'll begin with feedback from the local committee. Don?
Madam Chair, Lori Ashik, the Executive Director of the Cultural Gardens Federation, is here, and she can speak to their approval.
Yes, thank you, Don. The Cultural Gardens Federation Design and Preservation Committee and the board did approve the conceptual design some time ago for this garden, with the comments that we really appreciate the concern for the trees, the landscaping. We like the pathways, and particularly the overlook and the access to the neighborhoods. One of our comments was that, or the Federation's comments were that, we wanted to make sure that this actually has an expression of the culture. While we appreciate the landscaping elements, we also, needs to express, what it is about this garden that expresses the Romanian culture. But it does sound like that will come in later phases. So particularly with the gate. So we were satisfied with that, and hopefully when they have these future updates in their design plans and future phases, they'll obviously come up for review by the Federation. So those are my comments.
Thank you for that feedback. We'll now open the floor up to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? We have a quiet group today. Who would like to start us off? I guess I'll start us off here. I'm sorry if I missed this. What is the materiality of your walking path? I saw that you do have stone for the elevated amphitheater area, but for the majority of your paving, I'm sorry if I missed that, if you stated that, because I do see different paving colors or textures.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, there's a few different surface treatments, in part based on the slope in some locations. So we wanted elements there that'll withstand over time that the slope, and then also kind of changing the material so that you get a different feel. The concept was having different sections and regions of Romania represented through the garden. So areas where it's more wooded and hilly, I'm just getting to the plan with where the materials are specified and called out, and I think it's maybe on 4. That's a zoom in. Yeah, coming back. That's one more. If you go back to page 4, I believe. So 4 of 12. And then a bottom left corner, it has a legend of, yeah, that's the right one. I know it's hard to read there. So there's concrete pavement, there's heavy duty concrete pavement. These are both primarily towards the center, where you see the double spiral and the main axis going north-south, but in this drawing it would be horizontal. There's exposed aggregate concrete pavement. There's heavy-duty exposed aggregate concrete pavement, concrete pavers, reinforced turf grass, where I mentioned aggregate pavement. There's lawn, and then the trail that's maybe the darkest, as you see it here, that kind of looks like the tentacles going up in the trail. That's the chip and seal trail. And then there's also planting beds. So calling them out specifically, just going out to the different locations. looking at the legends to call them out. Sorry, it's taking me a second to zoom into the right location so I give you the right annotation for the different materials. But I think essentially there's the concrete pavers that are in the center that are the more orthogonal kind of hash pattern through the center. That's like the horizontal band through the middle, where we expect that there might be the most significant kind of weight, potentially if a vehicle comes in to drop off grills or to drop off tents or other materials for an event. That might be the pathway. It's wide enough so that a vehicle can drive underneath it, and also underneath the Moorish gate if once it's built. So that was part of the plan. So that's the kind of most heavy duty elements, and then the concrete paths kind of extend up to the far right of this plan that goes up to the relocated Ionescu statue on the prominent platform that he's on. And then again, the dark hash pattern that you see through the more squiggly lines, that's the chip and seal material. And again, those are the materials that we've had. We had a lot of conversations and discussions with the landscape team and with the city on the types of materials and edge treatments and exactly how they're poured, so that we minimize any kind of disruption to maintenance, particularly thinking of lawnmowers and vehicles that are going to be crossing over the pathways. We don't want to damage their equipment, but we also don't want them to damage our investment in the garden either. So we came to like a mutually agreed upon, kind of solution that way. The last thing I say, if vegetation comes up, as you can see, we're not very planting heavy. Besides surrounding the amphitheater location, there's some taller grasses, and I know those are specified in the plan as well, but we essentially didn't want to propose too many perennials or plants that require significant maintenance. And we've also found that those tend to be elements that are inadvertently cut by the city. So we've actually had that happen to us before when we've planted new beds, and then they end up getting cut like within a week actually. So a lot of it is grass, relocating the trees, and some of the grasses that are located for some stormwater filtration nearby that amphitheater.
Good, thank you for that
Okay.
explanation.
Well, maybe too much, I don't know.
No, that's exactly what we need to know, so I appreciate it.
Sure.
Mr. Clicchia, questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. It's just that Romania has a very, very rich historical culture going back to the Romans and pre-Romans. Also, has a very strong variety of culture, whether Hungarians, Moldavians, of course, the Romanians, great rivers. I'm curious if there is a mission vision, like what are you trying to accomplish here as far as Cleveland and Romania as a culture and as a nation?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. First off, I'll say there is a mission in forming this entity, this Friends of the Romanian Cultural Garden, to create a shared purpose. As kind of mentioned, there isn't one unifying entity that kind of a fraternity that's the Romanian community in Cleveland. It tends to be very fractured, in my opinion, and opinion of others, based on religious lines. So the majority are Orthodox. I myself grew up in a Baptist or a Protestant Romanian community. There's Catholic as well, and then Jewish Romanians and non-religious Romanians. And one mission is to create this shared project that has been really encouraging to me to see how people have kind of crossed over those boundaries and started working together. Meeting, fundraising, going to each other's events. Frankly, that wasn't very common, at least in my experience. It was kind of siloed. So I think one vision is just in this process of working together to keep everyone involved and feel like it's not led by any one church group or led by any one community, but this really shared responsibility. Now, the second part in how does that play out into the design? I think, as you mentioned, going back to the Roman times or even before, we tried to ground this in something that's very deep in history. So the Dacian spiral itself is something that is this the most visible kind of prominent element of the site, is really the foundation in a shared history. So we feel like that's kind of representative of the fact that there may have been these, different branches in more recent years in terms of how people identify, but this is something that's like a shared element of our history that goes back, thousands of years. Then creating a stage, a platform for events to actually take place. It really, frankly, isn't very commonly used for events right now. And I think, as Lori can attest, there's other gardens that do a much better job of having programming and events outdoors. And we know that now during COVID, outdoor spaces have become increasingly important, and opportunities for individuals to meet and gather outside is maybe more important than ever. So a real driving force of the design was to create a series of outdoor rooms or spaces that can accommodate different sizes. So the right side of that spiral has essentially seats that are embedded into the lawn as the topography goes up, so that stage in the center of the right spiral can be used as a performance venue. But then it also can work as a much larger venue with the Moorish gate as a backdrop, so that you can accommodate seating in that whole central area, as well as smaller get-togethers or sessions around the left spiral is a sort of a table, that council ring table, kind of inspired by the sculptor Brancusi, his work. So we've tried to kind of make some gestures, even in the basic landscape, towards being rooted in deeper cultural touch points, things that people will remember. But I think, as Lori said, she's absolutely right. There's the Georgianescu statue, which is going to be part of this first phase, the Dacian spiral, the council ring, but there's a lot more opportunities to come in the subsequent phases to kind of highlight additional cultural figures, and that will also entail like another round of re-engagement with our community and see who's most important, who are the people that we want to highlight, because there's a lot there's a lot of potential there, but we just don't have those identified just yet. Hopefully that answers your question. I mean, it's a good question even further, like the mission. I think we're off to a good start. It's been sort of like herding cats, to be frank with you. This is over a 10-year process. We've just tried to do it the right way, but sometimes the right way is the slow way. That's the reality. We've tried to engage people from other states, and they've come to our design charrettes. We've met with the city. Frankly, the parks and maintenance commissioner, Anthony Scott, and the forester said, "We thank you so much for even reaching out to us. We often find out about these after the fact and then have to deal with it. So the fact that you reached out to us in advance and asked us, they're very appreciative of that. So hopefully this sets a precedent for how we continue to work together going forward."
Well, thank you very much. It's just such it's a very rich historical culture with multi-nationalities that seem to have gotten along fairly well over the few hundred centuries that they've been together. So it would be an interesting addition to Cleveland. Also, Romania is famous for great sculptors. You mentioned Brancusi, also great poets and philosophers. So are there maybe plans that add? I think you mentioned adding maybe some sculptural elements and architectural elements that would be more symbolic of the Romanian culture.
Yes, yeah, and again, the locations of those are shown on the plan, so we're not leaving that all up to the future. If you zoom in, and I apologize, I know these sorts of drawings tend to work best for printed full scale and people standing around a table looking at them. But they are located like in the lower left corner here of this drawing that's on screen right now. You can see the small squares that are along the edges of that drop-off location, or one of those first kind of points. Those are all individual pedestals that we imagine will be built and would honor individuals from Romanian American culture, could be in recognition of other, great accomplishments in Romanian culture as well. So we have those identified, the locations for them, and a general sense of what those would be. I mean, you could imagine some examples from the other cultural gardens where they have similar kind of pedestals with potentially a bust or a plaque or interpretive signage that identifies those individuals. We just don't have those designed. But I will say that from our previous planning work with the community, we do have a long list of who those potential individuals could be. So we're not starting from scratch. We do have a lot of content and data and feedback from our community members on what they'd like to see there. We just haven't identified those yet. I think we sort of envision those as elements that people might more likely be interested to fund, frankly. So the hardest part sometimes is getting funding, is even for a smaller amount, just to get this plan drawings completed. But the thing that some people are more excited about is to feel like they're the ones that provided the funding to have this individual honored because they love their work or they love their process. So we hope that those won't be too difficult to fundraise going forward. But we still need to fundraise all of this, for this first phase. We have a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I think one of the positive things is that there's work ahead. It's hard to plan something like this and try to get it accomplished quickly. I think there's an element of growth that is attached to it. And I think the slowness of it is actually a positive factor because it allows people to participate along the way. So I think it's a great project, and I wish it the greatest success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Klickia. Mr. Edmond?
And thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think this will be a great canvas for developing those future installations. And I think that gate in particular is going to be a really critical design element. I think it sort of acts as an anchor and ties a lot of things together. One maybe minor question, but there's an Ohio historic marker on the site right now. Is that going to be relocated, or are you designing around that?
Yeah, I think I think we have it. Let me see in the plan.
I think Carl is circling it with his hand.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I'm looking on my screen, and you already grabbed it. There you go. Yeah, and yeah, because there's a Romanian flag as well, like on the corner. So the design of that plaza accommodates those new those elements being relocated. So I think it actually says, yeah, relocated Ohio historical sign. So that's specifically called out in the plan. Thanks for bringing it up, Carter. Another thing I mentioned, sorry if I'm interrupting, but in regards to the Moorish gate, one important development that happened since we spoke last time was that we did have the ambassador to Romania, the Romanian ambassador, visit Cleveland. He's new and wanted to do a tour of all 50 states in the U.S. so that he could make himself kind of available and known to Romanian Americans that are in need of his help, or vice versa when he needs support for policies in the other direction. But importantly, his first stop was Cleveland, and that was very intentional. And he made that point clear that it's one of the oldest Romanian American communities in the country. And he found it very important to make that clear and visible. And during that conversation, we were able to meet with him and asked him, what degree of support can he provide for this garden, and also had him visit the space as well. We thought that was important for him to see. And so, of course, he was very, excited to see and visit the location. And one of the ways that he said that he'd be more than happy to support is to put us in connection with fabricators in Romania that are very skilled at this sort of work. So creating an arrangement where it could potentially be constructed in Romania and then shipped over could be actually cheaper than having it constructed here. And then also in terms of fundraising, he's going to be a big supporter of ours as soon as these construction drawings are completed, to connect us with large Romanian companies and businesses that he feels would be more than happy to support, the construction costs, because this is the kind of thing that, they see as a great value. So I just wanted to, kind of introduce that, which I thought was a really great, moment that we were able to capitalize on when he was here in Cleveland.
That's excellent. That's amazing that you have that support for this project in the community. Just like to jump back to Mr. Edmond. Did you have additional questions or comments?
No, I'm sorry. I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay. Well, I think this is a wonderful project. I think your continued development has really strengthened the project. I like your design approach of trying to provide, that connection to the culture, but really starting with the foundation and, which is the landscape design, but being thoughtful enough to provide locations. So as this continues to develop, it develops aligned with the master plan. I think it's also very noteworthy that you've used very functional but very creative, used functional materials, but in a very creative way to provide some variety across the entire site versus a standard brushed concrete, because it's functional but not very aesthetic. So thank you for being thoughtful and providing that variety, but the usability of the space. So I'm in support of the project. Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve the project as presented. I'm not sure we've mentioned any special requirements at this point.
I would agree with that. I didn't hear any conditions requested or suggested.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Mr. Brunges?
Just want to confirm, we are approving the site plan and the elements, and that as more detailed items come, that they would return with stuff like that, like the council or any future monuments, etc., would return.
Great suggestion. So you're suggesting that we add the condition that any future additions to the space, like the monuments, signage, or any other architectural elements, come back to the commission for review. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So, Mr. Pettit, before I ask, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add that I think we do have a material list, but I do think it would be useful if the applicant could submit samples of all the materials just for the record. That's usually part of our requirements when we take action.
Would an image board of the different textural configurations be acceptable, knowing these are concrete, most of them?
I think an image board would be plenty, and that could just be submitted to staff.
Okay, perfect. So you recommend adding that as a second condition. Mr. Klickia, do you agree with those two conditions being added?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
All right, so the motion a second with the two conditions of any future additions to the site coming back to the be submitted to the Landmarks Commission, and a sample board be submitted to the commission for record. Any additional conversation? Mr. Pettit, your hand is still up. Is there something else? Nope.
No, I'm sorry. I do that a lot. I apologize.
So I make sure I'm not overrunning what you wanted to say. So, all right, Ms. Pettit, could you please call roll and announce the results?
Thank you. Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
The motion to approve as presented with the two conditions passes unanimously.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing your project progress.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commission members, and thank you, Lori, as well. We appreciate your support throughout this process very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Before we move on to our next applicant, Mr. Tomsic, I see you're present with us today or now. If we wanted to let you know that your application was approved previously prior to, I think, you arriving. So you might want to connect with your owner.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to your next applicant, the Lebanese Garden located at 1190 Martin Luther King Drive, Phase 2 improvements.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is Pierre Bijani. I'm the chairman of the project, and I thank you for taking the time of putting us on the schedule today. I have with me our architect, Mr. Burj Shakarian, and are you, Burj, available? Is Burj with us? I see his name. And also we have Lori Ashik, is executive director of the Cultural Garden. Are you, Lori, with us also? Is she still there?
Yes, I am.
All right. So I think I probably should give you the floor first, Lori, to tell everybody about the approval we had from the design and from the Cultural Garden, and then I will pass it on to Burj to explain if this is the correct procedures here.
Sure. Well, my only comment is that the Culture Gardens Federation Board has approved the design plan, the conceptual plan.
Thank you, Lori. All right. We move to Mr. Burj Shakarian, the architect. Are you, Burj, with us? Hello, Burj. All right. Well, Burj.
Now, hello.
Hey, Burj. Okay, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. The Lebanese Garden had asked me to look at their present phase 1 design, which basically entails a walkway. It's almost like a Roman hippodrome. And the idea was to do something that would celebrate the Lebanese identity. And the idea that I had was to be able to celebrate the 10 cities of Lebanon that go back to antiquity. So each city has such a phenomenal history, starting with the Phoenicians, which was a maritime civilization that extended from Cyprus to the Pillars of Hercules and beyond. And the idea was to take each one of the cities, Tyre, Byblos, Baalbek, that have special meaning to the Lebanese identity, to be able to create almost a necklace with the diamond around the necklace that glorify or signify the Lebanese identity. Can you move to the next drawing, please? As you can see, the 10 cities that are outlined, and also the idea of celebrating the cedar tree of Lebanon, which is the symbol of Lebanon, and it stands almost as if it were the menorah of the Lebanese people. Each one of these cities has a deep history to it. Beirut goes back 4,000 BC, which is amazing. And then you have other cities like Byblos, Baalbek, which has the substantial monuments of Rome. including the Temple of Bacchus and the Temple of Jupiter. So the medallions basically are going to be a description of the history and the meaning of each one of the cities in the history of Lebanon. Not only that, but as far as the loyalty of the Lebanese people, everybody identifies themselves to the city-state from where they came, such as Sidos, Tripoli, and Bashari, which is basically the birthplace of Kabil Gibran, the Lebanese poet, which denotes the modernness, the cultural modernness, both literary and artistic, in the scheme of the Lebanese culture. Also, at the entrance, we have developed the outline of Lebanon, which has a distinctive outline to be a stage for speeches, for concerts, for inviting people into their environment. Pierre, do you have anything else to add to this?
Yes, thank you, Burge. That was great idea, great product that you come up with. What we wanted to do also, we wanted to present our culture in a good way. We wanted to present the history. We wanted to make it as an educational also to people here. When they come in, they know who is Lebanon, what is Lebanon is all about, that the history goes back thousands of years. We are the beginning of the civilizations Phoenicians started the alphabet. We have the original alphabet of the word that is going to be also engraved into the cedar tree and the Phoenician history. And these cities, Byblos and Tyre, and they are the first cities and the today word that they started, and they are out of Lebanon. So we're proud of this history. We're proud of what we have. And we wanted to make it when somebody goes by the garden can understand what is Lebanon is all about and what is our culture is all about. We have already did phase 1. We have planted the symbols of Lebanon, the Lebanese cedar trees that they are already planted on phase 1. And this is phase 2. We want to improve on it, and we wanted to make sure that we have these cities history and these cities involved, and a map of Lebanon that Burge just talked about, along next to it the cedar tree that is the symbol of Lebanon, the symbol of this Lebanese. Also, we will have a statue or a bust for Gibran, Khalil Gibran, the biggest poet and the guy who did so many things that is well known around the world, and he is of Lebanese descent. So this is the type of things around the side, the walkway that we have. We'll put these cities and we'll explain to them what they are, and this map of Lebanon will use it as a small stage to different events, to different accommodation that we do over there. And so that's basically the plan. And I appreciate your questions or your remarks.
Thank you for the presentation. We will begin with, I guess we did receive feedback from Ms. Ashik earlier about the Cultural Gardens review. Did you have anything to add to that, Ms. Ashik?
No.
Okay, thank you. And we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Edmond.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. In looking at the plan and the stage that's in the shape of the map, particularly if there's going to be activities or performances there, did you consider any seating, any fixed or sort of place for gathering, watching, that kind of thing, or even just seating to take a rest as you kind of walk around the course of the pathway?
We discussed this. I think we wanted to make Just we don't want to make a big seating like they did with the other with the Centennial Plaza we might be able to move to add some benches around or something like this. But Burj, what is your intake on this?
Well, the idea was that this is going to be almost on a temporary basis. The whole idea was to elevate the stage, to make the outline of Lebanon, so that if there are any speeches, as you can see, part of the walkway faces the so-called stage or the map of Lebanon. The idea was that beyond that, for short periods of time, we said that maybe we can add benches later on, or we can look at that. But the idea was to be able to have people viewing, standing up the activities.
Right.
The essence, the powerful essence, I think, is none of the cultural gardens are trying to illustrate specific cities that make up their culture. And this shows the diversity, the makeup of Lebanon. As I said, this is a necklace with an emerald diamonds attached to the necklace. I mean, that's the whole idea of the medallions describing each one of the cities, showing the location where the city is located, even using the Arabic script to denote the name of the cities, so that it shows that the kind of a cultural values that are emanating from Lebanon, you know, and I think that's so important. You look at cities like Sidon, which was at one time the capital of the Phoenicians. They invented the color purple.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the Greeks refer to the name Phoenician came from the Greeks that were referring to Phoenica, which meant purple. So that's why the name Phoenician stuck, because they invented the royal blue purple that was so valued both in the Greek world and in the Roman world.
Right.
The Phoenician civilization lasted from 2000 BC to about 300 BC until Alexander the Great. I mean, and each one of these city-states were very important to the makeup of the Mediterranean.
Thank you.
So
That's really helpful. I want to just make sure that I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure we have some time to continue to talk about the design here. The history is very helpful. And I think Mr. Kalikia had some things to add or questions to ask.
Okay, yes, I do. Thank you. I'm just curious, you know, what the plan is to individualize or distinguish each city. I know you mentioned Sidon, famous for the color purple. What is the plan to distinguish and identify these cities and emphasize their significance and differences?
The whole idea was to have a circular medallion, as you can see in the section here, and to be able to describe each one of the cities, so that as you walk by, it's almost like an art gallery, that you are going to look at each one of the medallions. You are going to be able to read. You are going to be able to see the Arabic writing, the history, how far back it goes, the location of each city within the map of Lebanon. So that's the whole idea, to be able, as if you were looking to a painting walking through the art museum, to be able to look at each one of the medallions and reading. You know, for instance, Sidon with the color purple, maybe the medallion would be a purple slab to show that that has a special meaning. So we have to develop that a kind of a symbolic writing for each one of the medallions. And as I said, the medallions basically are like the necklace, with the pearls.
Okay. Yeah, so I understand that. And what material will these medallions be made of?
The medallion, it's because of the size, they are 5-foot diameter, and they are out of precast concrete.
Precast concrete, okay.
Yes.
So then how will the lettering and,
Concrete that could mimic the stone, that could mimic granite.
so how will the information be applied to that surface?
It's going to be carved in, basically. It's going to be sandblasted in.
Okay. So yeah, I'm seeing this as kind of a storytelling, like a book as you walk around.
Yes.
this circle. You're reading the story, the history of this country and the people.
You know, the cities, the people, I mean,
Yes.
everything that comes, you know, from antiquity, as I said, it's going to describe that the whole thing. So, I mean, the whole idea of city-states, almost like you look at Italy, during
Yeah.
city-states, the culture of the city-states, each one of the city-states was different. Unfortunately, when Garibaldi unified Italy, that the kind of a specificity of each region got lost.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, these cities were actually independent cultures, independent countries along the way. So
Exactly
to
right.
distinguish that, yeah, to distinguish that, I mean, it just so happens they're now part of Lebanon, but they have a rich history individually.
Exactly. I mean, just to tell you a little history. You take this, the city of Tyre, which is south of Beirut. When Alexander the Great arrived at the city, you know, they submitted to Alexander the Great. However, one thing that they did not do and anger Alexander the Great was he was asked to visit their temple, and they would not allow a stranger to visit the temple. And that anger Alexander the Great and punished the city very badly. And that's part of history.
It is.
Excellent. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you.
Burj, I am so proud of you knowing the history of Lebanon. That's great.
Oh, well, it's important. You know, when you ask me, do something with the walkway that would identify that would create the Lebanese identity, I couldn't think of anything else but celebrate the cities.
Thank you. Thank you so
You know,
much. Thank
the
you.
whole idea of the cities to be like millions, you know?
Yes.
Great.
I mean,
And so
it's a
to
simple idea.
Mr. Edmund, Mr. Ed, I want to continue on the design because I think you have a great concept, and we want to just talk about the design of the garden a little bit more here. So let's continue the conversation with Mr. Edmonds. Questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask about the large cedar tree, obviously iconic of Lebanon. Can you describe how this is meant to be made, the materiality, the finish qualities? It looks like there's maybe two different finishes there, the dimensionality of this.
Well, the cedar tree is the menorah of the Lebanese people. And the whole idea was to create it with a steel construction, perforated metal, so that you have the transparency at the same time. As a matter of fact, we have a price to fabricate from a steel structural fabricator, and you are looking at $90,000. Also, at the same time, we are celebrating the 22nd of November as Independence Day. That's when Lebanon became an independent state on 22nd of November 1943 from the French Mandate.
Right.
And the whole idea was that the trunk would be, this would come in sections all bolted together, basically, powder coated. I have a price for it, but the upper part, the branches would be perforated still, so that there is a lightness and an airy feeling to the whole thing, as if it were alive, you know. And on the trunk of the tree, we have the Phoenician ship, which was part of their maritime civilization. And they were fantastic shipbuilders doing the construction using the cedar tree with mortise and tenon. You know, as a matter of fact, the cedar tree, that was the only resource that they had, and they did marvels with it. The story
Will you be putting that story on the tree here in that area that's shaded brown? Are you going to also, since this is such a storytelling element, will you be telling some of that story on this tree?
Yes, the upper part that you're referring to, I think, is the carving of the alphabet.
Yes.
The Phoenician script was the very first alphabet with 22 letters. As a matter of fact, the Hebrew script is based on that. The Greek script is based on that. And also the Roman script is based on that.
Well, I think that'd be great if how you're mounting this steel tree. I'm assuming it's on a base plate,
Yes,
or is it on a round base plate or rectangular base plate?
It's mounted on a base plate that has a foundation, and the whole thing is anchored to the foundation.
I would encourage you to place some of that history, which is very intriguing and very helpful, but I'm just trying to, allow us to continue to give you the feedback on the design, because I think this is a great storytelling. You're really, as Giancarlo had mentioned, trying to use this as a story and a teaching moment, that I would encourage you to look at opportunities and ways that you'll tell the story throughout. Like for this tree, is it a plaque applied to the base plate, or is it as something, on a stand, so that people can understand this reason for the elements that you have selected. But the materiality of steel, I think, would make sense, and perforated would make sense because of this. What is the scale of this tree here? This is
20 feet high and 20 feet wide, which are exactly the proportions of the Lebanese logo.
I'd encourage you just to, yes, I'm sure if you have a fabricator, just the structure of that, because that's a very large piece of steel, and the amount of connectivity it needs to withstand wind in this area.
Absolutely. That's all.
I think would help.
We have designed that structurally, both for the foundation and the wind loads. We have taken in consideration the transparency, the perforation of the metal plates to allow for the wind to go through. We have done that, yes.
Okay, and what are the heights of the lower branches here?
We have a price for it.
That's excellent that you've walked through that. And what are the heights of the lower branches here?
On the lower branch, the height would be 7 foot.
Okay, so it wouldn't, just want to make sure that it's not a opportunity for people to try to climb it or things like that. Because that's, obviously this is a beautiful element you're trying to put here. And what is the color of the steel that you're intending for here? Is it going to be powder coated steel, or what's your intent?
At this point, we haven't made up a decision. One, to have it natural, another one to have it painted, to have it powder coated, that is.
Okay.
Almost as if it were a modern sculpture, like the portal downtown,
Sure. No, that's helpful. Giancarlo, I'm sorry. I think I spoke over you had your hand up. Did you have questions or feedback on the finish for the sculpture?
Just a couple of, you covered a lot of the things that I wanted to cover regarding this tree. I'm curious, so it'll be self-supporting, so those branches, as they rise up towards the peak, will be
yes, they are self-supporting. The branches that go in between them, they are the structural columns that support the branches. In other words, you see the trunk, and then you see the little branches going through the foliage. Those little branches are actually columns that are supporting the foliage.
And the plates that signify the branches will be perforated to?
Yes, perforated.
Very good. I want you to know that I did a Lebanese for the, I did a cedar tree at marble for the church, the Lebanese church in Carnegie, back in 1981 when I first came to Cleveland. So, yeah, I like this concept. I mean, this tree is very large. There's going to be some factors about, I'm sure you already did your homework as far as wind factors and flexibility.
That we are working on it. There should not be any problem at all.
Yes.
Okay. And it will sit on some type of a plate, supporting plate?
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, thank you.
The whole idea was create something new and big that means something, you know? I mean, that's the whole idea.
I mean, the cedar tree was always been the great symbol of Lebanon. Even the Egyptians were going to Lebanon to
yes.
harvest cedar. Yeah. Mhm.
That's exactly correct.
That's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And did you say I apologize that you had mentioned two different things, that the medallions will be a cast concrete material, but then finished like granite. Will that be all of them?
All of them, with exceptions here and there, depending on the history that we want to relate. Like I said, it would be nice to take Sidon and make it purple, because
Sure. And so that would be through stains, or would that be through applicants on top of the precast?
No, that would be an integral color in the concrete, in the precast concrete.
Okay, so I think what I would say is that, I'm in support of the design here and the approach to the design elements. I am, and the overall design, but I would like to just, recommend, if someone's going to make a motion, to condition to submit final material for the pedestals and final details on the tree, because I'm understanding the concept, but I would like to just see the execution of that tree, since it is so substantial, and the final color you select for that tree, just to make sure that it's working with the colors that you select for the pedestals. So that would be my recommendation to the commission as we move forward. But I'm in support of the design and the phase 2 additions. So
I do agree with you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion?
I would like to move that we approve with conditions that have been mentioned. I would also like to suggest, Lebanon is very well known as having great limestone. And I was curious if these medallions could be made out of a Lebanese limestone. Have you looked into that, Mr. Shikari?
Giancarlo, that's an excellent point. That's absolutely an excellent point. Baalbek is very rich in limestone.
Right.
That would be a great approach.
And it's not very costly. It's a reasonable.
No, it's not very costly at all. I do agree with you.
Okay. So I so move then.
Thanks for the advice.
So we have a motion with one condition for final materials and colors to be submitted. And I'll just add to that or recommend adding to staff for their approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion to approve with the conditions regarding final materials and colors and details passes unanimously.
Thank you. We look forward to your project continuing its development.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You gotta be proud of this property. You gotta be proud of it. You gotta see something very unique. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Thank you, Burge.
Thank you, Pierre.
That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll now move on to our concept plan reviews. We have one on our agenda today, I believe, right? Yep. And it is located at, does not have address, the Colombian Garden on Martin Luther King Drive, new garden plan. We'd like to welcome the applicant to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ivan Cerquera. I'm with the Ohio Colombian Foundation. I'm the president. And I'm here also with Mr. Bill Gruber. He's the vice president, and our architect, Tom Sarfos. And first of all, once again, I want to thank you, everyone, for being here. I just want to tell you this will be the first Latino or Hispanic garden. And we are really, really proud of this. Thank you so much for Lori and the Federation. Lori is here, I believe, because during all these years, really almost 3 years, we have been working on this project. And we appreciate her guidance so much, and the Federation as well. Tom Sarfos is our architect, and we are really pleased to be working with him because after so many meetings we had with him, he really captured the Colombian culture into the design that you are gonna see in a few minutes. He also captured the Colombian culture and the Colombian landscape, which was also important for us. And thank you so much, Tom. And I'm just gonna let Tom talk about our design.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. The Colombian Cultural Garden is the place where we want to tell the story and express the cultural, biological, economic diversity of Colombia in a beautiful garden setting. There are many stories to tell, not the least of which is Colombia is the second most biologically diverse country on our planet, but it's also a modern, evolving nation. The unifying, can we get the plan up on the screen, by the way?
And just for housekeeping, Mr. Brunges does control your slides, so just tell him in advance when you'd like him to advance.
Go to the next one. There you go. The unifying thematic concept of this plan is the physiography or geography of Colombia, which is quite unique. Beginning with the islands, both on the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, which is very unique in and of itself. The coastal lowlands, which is where many of the large cities are. The highlands, which is predominantly the Andes. The llanos, which is the grasslands. And the rainforest, which is a significant part of the Amazon basin. Visitors can move through all these areas in what we're calling the exploration trail. And that has the number 6 on it, by the way, if you need to identify that. The center of the garden is the Plaza Colombia del Pueblo. It's a unifying cultural element of the village or Pueblo center, or gathering place for many communities throughout Colombia. The plaza is the welcoming area for visitors. It serves as an event space as well. Although this is still a master plan, obviously a concept plan, and final materials have not been decided. The intention there is to use a combination of brick and probably concrete. It will include a map of Colombia in the center. It will have, that's number 2 is that area. It will have a traditional structure, which is number 3. In addition to offering shelter, it will serve as a stage and provides an access to a wealth of information. The plaza is surrounded by a seat wall, and there will be an entry portal. That's in the area of number 1. That may be a unique piece of art, or it may be another traditional architectural element, something we're still thinking about. The shelter is open except for end walls, a wall at each end. Those walls will be used as storyboards. There'll be maybe some additional vertical storyboards in the shelter. And one of the many challenges we have in telling stories about any country, but particularly Colombia, is how do you tell both the traditional and the present day modern stories? I did have the experience of traveling in Colombia a couple of years ago, and which means I know enough to be dangerous, I guess. But there's a lot of tradition, a lot of history, but it's also a very, very modern country, and there's a lot of stories to tell. We'll use the storyboards in the shelter, and we'll use some modern technology. We want to include QR codes so people can use their phones to access even more information. And it also means that it's not just a static display, because while the traditions and the history maybe don't change, but the modern country is changing. So we want the garden to evolve with that. Our phase one of the garden would include the plaza, the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, the plaza, the entry area. Future phases will be accessed using the exploration trail. And that's probably going to be a colored stamped concrete is what we're thinking. The islands area will include a fire pit, seating, and picnic tables. Each feature will be its own island. The highlands includes boulders representing the Andes and planting mimicking the mountain conditions. The llanos or grasslands will be a field of native grasses. That's number 9. The rainforest will include tree plantings to provide a more extensive overhead vegetative canopy, understory plantings reminiscent of rainforest understory. But you do understand it's pretty hard to replicate a rainforest in Ohio. So we'll do the best we can. There'll be a storyboard to interpret each of the physiographic regions. There'll be seating in various places. Sculptural elements consistent with Colombian artistic traditions will be included, and we have places for them. This is a master plan, and I said there's a lot of final decisions to be made. Everything in the garden will be handicapped accessible. There are no steps, no steep grades, and there's good visibility. There's no hiding places in the garden. When you're in the garden, you'll be able to see what your environment is like. We've been very considerate of maintenance. I've been working in the Rockefeller Park for the last 40 years. I know what the problems are. The city mows the grass. The rest of the responsibility is the Cultural Gardens group. The only really high maintenance area we have is in the entry, where we're thinking we would do some perennial plantings, which do require some maintenance. That pretty well covers what we're thinking. I'm sure you may have some questions.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. That's very helpful and informative. We'll start with Ms.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot to raise my hand.
I'm sorry.
I'm Bill Gruber.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
I just wanted to finish up. Sorry, I'm Bill Gruber, the vice president, as Yvonne had said. I believe, Tom, that Mr. Pettit has also keyed up your narrative that had some this is the plan, and then a narrative that you could go through briefly. We don't have to read it, but
well, I did. I pretty well covered that.
But it shows some of the elements that you were talking about.
Yeah, I didn't know if he had this.
Yes. So go ahead.
Some of the images we used. The garden entry, there's a couple different ways we could do this. We would like a vertical element there. It may be a public art or an art piece similar to something on the right, or it may be a piece of traditional architecture. Not quite what we have on the left there, because we don't want to block the view into the garden. It would be much more of an open kind of feature. This photograph below that would be something similar to what we do in that entry area number 1. The plaza, Columbia has many plazas, so there's just some photos here of different approaches to plazas. You can go to the next page. Additional plaza examples. Then the shelter we're thinking about would be something similar to that picture or those pictures that you see. A traditional tile roof, railing in the back, pretty open in the front. And as I said, end walls would be opaque because we would use them as storyboards. And we could hang some vertical boards in addition. to that, similar to what you see there on the bottom right. In terms of our standards, the National Park Service has very good interpretive material standards, and we take a good look at those and apply those. Go ahead. Some traditional architecture, top right. Top left is the physiographic regions, which I've already talked to you about. And you can see the contrast between the top right and the picture below of the traditional Columbia and obviously very modern Columbia. Seat walls, we're still thinking about how we want to do that, but I don't think we want to put a back on them because that becomes a bit of a barrier. But we'd like something interesting and colorful. The islands area with some picnic tables, a fire pit. Picnic tables maybe a little more traditional than that modern design you see there. And the exploration trail and the kind of things you would find along it that would give you information about the garden, about Columbia. The Llanos, I wasn't even aware of the grasslands in Columbia. It's not a part of it. It's a big country. It's not a part I visited. The Llanos is a very significant physiographic region. Go ahead. Next. And the rainforest, which I said is a bit of a challenge. We may have to do some real artistic things there to sort of give that feeling that we want to give. So some examples. Existing trees on the site. We have some very mature oaks. Unfortunately, we have two that are more than mature. They're dead. We're going to have those removed hopefully this summer. We'll review that with the city forester when we do our annual walkthrough of all the cultural gardens. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open up I'm sorry, we started with, do we have feedback from the Cultural Gardening Committee? Federation, sorry.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the Federation has approved the concept design, the conceptual plan for the garden. And we are happy to see our first Latinx garden in the cultural gardens. We are very happy about that. We also approved garden from Mexico a while back, so that should be coming in the next couple of years. So we are very happy about that. As far as our conversations about this, we were very happy to see the part of this, the emphasis on the biodiversity and replicating as much as possible the vegetation of Columbia, instead of just concentrating on the hardscape. So we were very happy about that. The shelter, it would be something relatively new for the gardens, but we thought that this is a very common cultural element in Columbia, and it's not a huge scale element, so we were fine with that. And just, I know this is in future phases, so I think the city might have some regulations regarding fire pits and picnic tables, so we'll have to talk about that as the future phases are discussed and as they come before the Federation. So, but yes, we are in support of this plan.
All right, thank you. We'll open the floor up to the commission. We'll start with Giancarlo.
Thank you. I'm wondering, is there anything there now?
Right now, it's grass and trees.
Okay, so this is actually a whole new enterprise.
Yeah, there's one park bench sitting in the background somewhere. But
yes, we do have a little bit of a landscape area that we have been maintaining and planting perennials and annuals in, and a temporary sign. So once we get our approvals from an ordinance passed by the city after landmark approval, then we'll get an address, a pole, a flag, and a permanent sign. And then we can move from there. But we do have a small landscaped area that we have used as a gathering place.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I like the graphics that you put forth. Also, the idea of something educational. Columbia is a bit of a mystery, I think, to many of us. I've been there, and it's incredible. And some of the political issues that have occurred there in the last 20 years have actually helped preserving the rainforest, which is, I guess, a positive, negative outcome. But I think maybe some maps, some graphics that would give us more information on Colombia and its culture would be interesting.
That's our intent in the shelter to do that, put a lot of information in there.
Great idea. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Other questions or comments from the commission? I will insert mine right now. I'm sorry, you said you gave a great description, but I got lost with some of your numbers. What did you say 6 was going to be?
6 is what we call the exploration trail, which is that path you see going from the shelter, looping around to the left and also to the right to the island area, which is number 5.
And do you envision this out of like a standard pavement or an exposed aggregate concrete?
Well, we want this to be really accessible. So if we can do it, I'd like it to do it in a patterned concrete, something that doesn't look just like a concrete walk, but is easy to maintain and easy to get around on if you have any kind of disability.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I think that is appropriate for these gardens especially. And what was number 7?
Well, I didn't mention it, but number 7, one of the coffee is a big deal in Colombia. So number 7, as you leave the plaza and go toward the mountains, we'd like to do some kind of a coffee display, something really informative. I don't think we'll be serving, but we'll be telling people about it.
Sure. No, that's interesting. Will be interesting what you choose to do that in the future state in this environment. But I think that's appropriate for this location, its history, or it's what it's known for. And then I was looking for the key, so it's on the next slide. So maybe that's what I was trying to follow along.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have put it right on that plan, but anyway,
I followed most of them. I missed those 2. So I think this is an intriguing plan, and I think the maps would help people. The more and more we allow this area, the history is not understood through people handing it down as much. And I think some of the physical elements like a map are helpful in these new displays, along with the history. But overall, I think this is a great concept. But the fire pit was one item that I did, ask about, as you develop it, we'd want to see more details of it and so forth, if it's allowed. Mr. Edmond, you had questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My comment is that I just really love how much this focuses on the flora and the biodiversity. And I think both that's a great idea. It's a great concept for interpreting the country, but it also will make this a really wonderful, lush, inviting, biophilic environment. And then there's some really nice placemaking there with the plaza. My question is on number 5 over in the islands area, what's going on at the 2 ends of that trail there?
well, we're just thinking that would be locations for some picnic tables.
That's right.
They're sort of dead ends. A place to, get off to the side and sit down and have your lunch or, whatever's going on.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? So since this is a concept plan review, we will not be taking a vote on this, but do you feel like you've received enough feedback from the commission to continue the development of your project?
I did, yes.
Terrific, thank you.
Okay, I think we are in support and look forward to the continued development.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Great.
Thank you. And that concludes our conceptual plan reviews. We can move on to administrative reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one update. We received a letter yesterday from the Cleveland Restoration Society regarding the status of the Cleveland Playhouse, and apparently it's their feeling that the Cleveland Clinic now intends to move forward with the demolition. We will be consulting with the administration and the council member in the very near future. I will share that letter with the commission today, and we will keep you posted on how we decide to proceed with that issue.
Okay, no, that's interesting, and we'd love to hear how it continues on.
I don't think you have anything else unless anyone has questions.
Do we have any site visits that we should be aware of coming up?
We have nothing on the board right now. There's a proposed demolition of an old gas station on Detroit, but I have not received any information from them at this point. The Slovenian Workman's Home is now officially a designated landmark as of the 1st. And the Battery Park Powerhouse went through council committee on Tuesday and just needs to be voted on before also being designated. So, and if you want to watch either of those are available on YouTube to hear the council's feedback on these.
Excellent. So it's exciting to see or hear that the process is moving forward fairly quickly from our recommendations. Any questions or comments from the commission? Anything else, Carl, or I know usually you advance some slides. Nope. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, then that adjourns our meeting today. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks. And thanks for dealing with the chaos of having somebody in my backyard earlier. Sorry about that. So thanks for accommodating, so especially Mr. Strickland for stepping up and taking charge. So thank you.
Anytime, Madam Chair.
I appreciate it. So with that, everybody have a great day, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Take care.